Okay, we're live now on Facebook. Good morning, everyone. This is the Washington State Fraternal Order of Police's weekly legislative update. I'm going to begin with introductions. Marco, you're at the top of my screen. You want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, James. Marco Monteblanco, president of the Washington State FOP. Happy to be here on a Saturday again.
Chad, you're next on my screen. You want to introduce yourself?
Morning, Chad Petersick, Washington State Lodge Chaplain.
Right on. Then we have Jeff. You want to introduce yourself?
Yep, Jeff and I are State Treasurer.
And Travis, you want to introduce yourself and what lodge you're from?
Sure. Travis Watkins with the Yakima Lodge Treasurer.
Great. And before I turn it over to Michael, my name is James Shumsher. I'm the West Side Vice President and the Legislative Chair. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Michael. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, good morning, everybody. As I always like to start out, happy 62nd day of the Washington State 2023 legislative session. 105-day session, so we passed the halfway mark. That's a good thing. I'm happy to be out of Olympia and happy to be in my home office and not spending some extra weekend time next to the Capitol. So everybody's got the agenda in front of them, and I'm going to go through like I always do and take a little pause after each one and see if there's anything coming across from folks's Marco, yours, and James's texts, or see if there's any questions in the chat. So last Wednesday at 5 o'clock was the House of Origin cutoff, as I've mentioned on these calls before. And remember, that means that policy bills and bills not necessary to implement the budget need to be passed out, or for all intents and purposes, they are considered dead for the session, but are eligible and remain in the system for the most part and have the ability to be heard next session. So one of the things I wanted to start by saying is House of Origin cut off at 5 p.m. And then the last couple of days, the legislature has been having public hearings on bills. And so it's been, interesting to see them get back into the, to the hearing process. And while I think folks are really tired, just the necessary part of the process where you get a big day done on Wednesday and then have to go right into hearings. I will say I talked to a couple of legislators Thursday and Friday, and I think there was a general consensus that maybe the body ought to think about taking the 2 days after the House of Origin cutoff off, so that legislators and hearings weren't held on those 2 days. So with that, I'm going to start with the Blake Fix update. That bill passed out a couple of Fridays ago, as I've mentioned, and is over in the House. It's not scheduled for a public hearing yet. And in case I forgot to mention it, the opposite House Policy Committee cutoff comes on the 80th day or the 29th of this month. So we are in about 20 days of public hearings. So all the bills that passed over will start getting scheduled in the opposite House. So I talked about what 5536 did last weekend. So I'm not going to go through that again. Suffice it to say, it will likely change in the House. Remember, that vote coming off the Senate floor was 28-21. So, from a process standpoint, I would characterize that as a pretty strong bipartisan vote. But I do expect the House majority party to put their stamp on what they think Blake should look like, the Blake Fix should look like. And remember, it incorporated several items as it passed off the Senate floor of Senator Solomon's bill that was heard in the Ways and Means Committee several weeks ago, along with all of the other proposed Blake Fix bills. So not scheduled yet. It's something that we can support moving forward, and we'll see how it goes and how our support changes, if at all, depending on how the House amends the bill in committee and moves it along to the full body. So, Michael's crystal ball. I do think that this is one of those bills that is very likely to end up in conference committee. And conference committees occur as the House and the Senate don't agree with the changes that were made on the bill as it went through the process. Conference committees will be made up of 5 members or 6 members, 2 from the majority party in each the House and the Senate, and 1 from the minority party. Generally speaking, that's the policy committee chair that the bill went through, and generally speaking, the vice chair of that committee, but sometimes the vice chair is switched back and forth with the bill sponsor. And then the minority party gets the 3rd seat on both bodies as conference committees, so a total of 6. So I'm going to stop there and see if you guys got anything on your phones in terms of texts or the chat, or see if James or Marco, if anybody wants to add a little bit on the Blake Fix Bill 5536.
Nothing on the chat or on Facebook. So Marco, you got anything for it?
No, all good. Thank you.
All right, proverbial work in progress. We're going to see how we go. The next item I want to talk about is kind of bills that died in the House. There were several of them. And I'll get to the pursuits next steps in a second. But House Bills 1363, which was the vehicular pursuit bill, House Bill 1586, which was the vehicular pursuit work group and grant program bill. Both died in the Senate House Rules Committee on Wednesday. Early on in that day, when it became, kind of to the place where there was an understanding that there just wasn't the votes in the D caucus to move those bills forward. There was an effort to include in those bills House Bill 1513, which, remember, was the non-moving violations bill that we, the FOP, did not support. So basically, you ended up with one bill that had all 3 topics in it. And for a lot of folks, that was just a bridge too far, us included. And we weren't willing to, move with those 2 vehicular pursuit related bills together with the non-moving violations bill. So those 3 bills together, the vehicular pursuits and the non-moving violations trifecta bill, if you will, also didn't pass. 2 other bills, House Bill 1025, the qualified immunity bill of Representative Ty, also did not have enough votes to get it to the floor for a full vote, so it died on the House floor calendar as well. And then finally, House Bill 1445, which was the Patterns and Practices Bill sponsored by Representative Hansen, which is a bill that we do support, also did not get off the second reading calendar, also didn't have the votes, and also failed to pass the full House. So I'm going to talk about vehicular pursuits here in a second. So let's pause for a second and see if there are any questions on 1025 or 1445. All right, so far so good. In response to the House not having enough votes to move a vehicular pursuit bill or bills, the Senate at about maybe 11 o'clock on Wednesday, give or take, understood that, if the vehicular pursuit issue was going to be kept alive for the session, that the Senate needed to pass a vehicular pursuit bill over to the House. So that started just a flurry of things on the Senate side. The only bill that was really in a position to take the vehicular pursuit language was Senator Lovick's bill that was originally introduced. So the Senate went and got that bill out of Ways and Means, brought it to the Senate floor, and in a striking amendment, put House Bill 1363, which is Representative Goodman's vehicular pursuit bill, that passed out of his committee in transportation with reasonable suspicion and including everything but property crimes. And without the 2-year sunset on it, and stuck a new title on the bill, and passed it out 26 to 23. And that Senate bill number, for folks who want to know, is 5352. And it's now passed over to the House for its consideration without the study language, without the work group language, and without any non-moving violation language. So just a pure vehicular pursuit bill, as we saw in House Bill 1363. I would note that the vote coming off the Senate floor was quite a bit tighter than the Blake fix bill. So the vote coming out of the Senate was 26 to 23. So really only one vote to spare. If you had 2 more no votes, it would have failed 25-24. So if anybody wants to know, or and maybe I'll just put it in the report, Marco, I'll put links to, and James, I'll put links to both of those debates in our report, just under each bill, so that when the report goes to the lodge presidents, if anybody is as wonky as me and you want to see those debates, they will, the link will be there to TVW, and you can go kind of look at it. The debate particularly on 5352 isn't very long. Took about a little bit over an hour on the Senate floor. There were 3 amendments that were posed by the Republicans that were all voted down on a party line vote. But one bill to add auto theft, one amendment to add auto theft back in by Senator Gildon, and one reckless driving offense, one to add back auto theft by Senator Padden, and the one amendment by Senator Short, again, all that failed on a party line vote. So like the Blake bill, the vote on 5352 was a proverbial, a proverbial bell curve. Most of the more conservative folks voting no, some of the more progressive folks voting no, and then a good smattering of moderates from both sides of the aisle voting aye to get it out 26-23. That vote is significant in that it does show to the other body the controversy that exists with a bill like that. So when you get that close of a vote, I think the lens by the opposite body is a little bit more focused, a little bit more mindful that that bill had some controversy, whether it's this one or another one, had some particular controversy and discussions around it that'll merit a closer look. So with that, James, Marco, I'll stop and see if there are any questions on vehicular pursuits. And we, the way that bill was amended in the Senate, we think it, threads a pretty tight needle, just like the Blake fix. And, as it moves over there, is something that we support. Having said that, if there are efforts to add things to it that make policy sense, we'll consider those and adjust our position accordingly. So with that, I'll stop and see if James or Marco wants to put a finer point on anything, or if there's anything in the chat.
I'll put a finer point on, not really a finer point, but just add that, like you mentioned earlier with Blake, this might, based on the narrow vote, may very well be something that ends up in the conference committee as well. The working group, I would not be surprised if that gets put in the budget and not a bill run, but there will still be a working group. So I definitely believe, like Blake, that the House will add things to this bill and we'll see where it goes. But again, a very positive step. And I want to point out that the person that put the striker that got this through were Senator Lubbock and Senator Monka Dingra. And I want to thank both of them publicly right now on behalf of the FOP for their leadership, recognizing that things were stalled in the House and they understand how important this topic is and stepped up. So again, I want to say thank you and look forward to working with everybody on both sides of the aisle on this issue moving forward. Marco, you got anything?
No, exactly. I'd say the exact same thing. Thanks. Thank you to, Senator Lubbock and Senator Dingra for recognizing the dynamics there and needing to get something out there to continue with. So appreciate it.
And James, you reminded me, I think there's a possibility too, that the grant program that was in the 1586 is also a good candidate for something to be in the budget as well. And before I forget, I'll go back to 1445 patterns and practices again. That is, something that's housed in the AG's office. And it too has a possibility of coming back as a budget item. And so, excuse me, that's one bill that I think has the possibility of also being revived vis-a-vis the budget. So, all right. And I'll also say, on 5352, I think, also, I think that both sides of the aisle on 5352 worked to get that vehicular pursuit bill out. I know that, the majority party has a significant role in that, but I also think that, the moderates that voted for it and the Republicans on the other side of the aisle also understood and knew that and know that, we've got to have something out there to fix vehicular pursuits. And moving along that more middle of the road approach was, a testament to how this process works and how both sides can come together and move something along. So
Very, very well said, Michael. And on the other side of the aisle in the Senate, Senator Binky, Senator Wagner, Senator Torres, we all want to say thank you for, reaching across the aisle and working together on it.
Yeah. All right, so the next bill I want to talk about is House Bill 1579. That is the statewide independent prosecutor bill that we continue to oppose and not be in favor of for the reasons that we've already talked about. So I'm not going to bore everybody with the reasons why we oppose it. I'll just tell you it was referred to the Law and Justice Committee on March 7th after it passed out, and it has yet to be scheduled for a public hearing. I'll try to sit down and see if I can talk with Senator Dingra to see how she feels about hearing the bill. Generally speaking, she hears all the bills that the opposite body sends her. So I expect that bill will get a public hearing when remains to be seen. But as I mentioned, we've got a deadline of March 29th to get opposite House bills out of policy committees. So we'll see how that goes. That is also one because it's housed in the Attorney General's office, another possible candidate for being necessary to implement the budget. So that too is a bill that could be revived if one of the budgets makes reference to it and funds it in the budget. So I'll stop there. See if there's any questions or comments on House Bill 1579. All right. Moving right along, privileged communications, House Bill 1187. A bill that we've supported and signed up in favor of, had one amendment on the House floor before it moved off, sponsored by Representative Robertson, and clarified that in those privileged communications, which for our purposes, because we send, an attorney out to officer-involved shootings, really isn't applicable because that privilege is always going to exist. but added some language that if it's, let's say, in our case, a lodge president or a guild president that goes out, that the communications aren't privileged if and to the extent there is information communicated about a crime being committed or the possibility of a crime being committed. And the idea being is you didn't want that communication to protect bad actors if something criminal had went awry. So, and that was communicated to, at that point in time, the guild president, or guild representative. But again, in FOP's situation and context, we always send an attorney out to represent our members. So the attorney-client privilege is going to apply in all of those communications, which is already existing law. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions. And I haven't seen that bill. Let me pop it up here really quick. I haven't seen that bill has been scheduled yet. Yeah, and it too was referred to the Law and Justice Committee. So on the Senate side. So more to come on that bill for sure as we get into the public hearing process.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, I would just want to give a shout out to one of our labor attorneys who did a phenomenal job on the research on this, was able to help steer our position. Dan Thinnell, I'm sure he's listening. He's not on today, but he did a great job. He was quick, found the research, sent it to Michael and I. And it's just an example of how the FOP works together, all facets of the FOP, how quick we can move and how easy we can get stuff that is better for law enforcement and get that information to the legislators as they need it. So again, shout out to Dan.
Right on. All right, next bill, 5424, which is Senator Lovick's flexible work schedule bill that we support. It's been scheduled for a public hearing next week in the House Community Safety, Justice, and Reentry Committee, or the committee that Representative Roger Goodman chairs. As we've done in the past, we will testify in favor of that bill and hope that it keeps moving along through the process. And then any questions on flexible work schedule? Okay, I'm gonna pop through just about 2 handfuls of bills that, are not as big of priorities, but things that we definitely are signing up in support and communicating to legislators that we support and testifying where appropriate. So House Bill or Senate Bill 5477, which is the bill implementing the recommendations of the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women People Task Force, something that we sign up in favor of. It goes together with the bill I'm going to talk about here in a minute, 1177. So that bill has a public hearing scheduled in it next week, and we'll sign up in favor as it moves along through the process. House Bill 1481, which is a bill that allows tribal peace officers to get training at the CJTC. That has a public hearing in Senate Ways and Means next week as well. And as that bill has popped through the process, we'll continue to sign up in favor of that to lend the FOP's support to that. A bill that we're monitoring is Senate Bill 5740, which is a bill to deter catalytic converter theft. It has a public hearing in the Law and Justice Committee next week, and that's just a monitor for us. But I wanted to let folks know that legislature is, trying to get at catalytic converter theft, and it's something that we've got our eyes on. Senate Bill 5120, which is the 23-hour observation crisis relief center bill. It has a public hearing in the House Healthcare Committee next week. Like most of other law enforcement, we will sign up in favor of that bill. And if anybody wants to know any more details on how that is going to work, please let me know. The one facility that is moving along presently in Kirkland had a lot of police and fire executive type folks at a press conference this past Wednesday, where That facility is it's an existing facility, so it has a lot of tenant improvements, but starting the process of the lease and getting that place up. It will have a 24-hour police drop-off bay to it. So as I mentioned on these calls, a place where law enforcement and fire and other first responders can drop folks off at a 23-hour crisis release center without having to take anybody to the jail or an emergency room. And I know that the turnaround time on the drop-offs is less than 10 minutes. So really good option for peace officers up in that neck of the woods. So again, something that we'll continue to support as it goes through the process. House Bill 1055, and that's the bill that puts the 911 operators into the public safety retirement system rather than just regular old PERS, a bill that we've supported. It passed the House and is on its way to the Senate and has not been scheduled for public hearing yet. I mentioned House Bill 1177. That's the AGO cold case unit for murdered and missing Indigenous women that goes hand in hand with 1077 up above, or 5477 that I mentioned up above. So again, another bill we're watching and will continue to support as it goes through the process. Three other ones, 1007, which is the interruptive military service bill that we've talked about. That will make it easier for folks to dip into their benefits, even if if it redefines, and James, you know this better than me, but it redefines the type of conflict that folks were in and allows them to have easier access to their benefits. And it's mostly just a clarifying change that we all thought kind of existed anyway. But again, another bill that we're supportive of moving forward. House Bill 1387, which is the peace officer applicant pool bill, Representative Ramos. Another bill that we're supportive of. And remember, this is going to be now a study at the CJTC. So they're going to do some digging into how and to what extent and what might be the best way to approach having the state basically bless a pool of a class at the CJTC at the state level and how that would work in terms of sponsorship and that sort of thing. So again, a piece of legislation that we're also supportive of. Then the last one I'll mention is Senate Bill 5606, and this is the bill to give some enhanced authorities to local law enforcement on illegal street racing in terms of vehicular impoundment, making that easier and things like that, and having the ability to arrest folks at scenes where they are perpetuating the illegal street racing and donutting and those sorts of things. So that bill has also not yet been scheduled for a public hearing, and we'll see how the next few weeks go. So sorry to be so winded. I wanted to get all that out just because, while we have our, top 4 or 5 things that we're working on, but I just wanted to let folks know that, there are a couple of handfuls of other bills out there that we support that, fit into the good little bill category and, always need a little bit of help and love and attention, keeping them moving through the process. So then last thing for me is budgets. The new revenue forecast and caseload forecast will come out on March 20th. And shortly thereafter, we will begin seeing the House and the Senate put their budgets out for the new biennium 23-25. And then they will also provide a few tweaks on the supplemental budget, which finishes up for 21-23 middle of this year. So with that, I'm going to stop. Want to see if there's any questions or comments on any of those things and see if I can provide folks a little bit more information.
So there's nothing on Facebook, nothing in the chat.
I can't believe that a lawyer talks for 30 minutes and nobody has any questions.
No, I think you do a very good job of being informative. I would only add, as you can tell through Michael's comments, there's a common theme, right? Things are going to come back up. There's the potential for those to come back up. So, and that includes even next session. So keep that in mind, even though something may be stalled or dead for this session, it doesn't mean it can't come back up next session. What I can assure you is the legislative team will be representing you and doing the best we can for our members and fighting the good fight. So anyway, if nobody else, if Michael, if you don't have anything else, let's go around the room, do closing and call it a good day. Okay, Marco, you want to kick us off?
Come on up. Get in the
Yes, looks like you have a dog there, Michael. There you
I
go.
do. Come on up, buddy.
So just to add on to James' comments. So obviously, you know, we have a lot of dedicated individuals on these calls and on our Tuesday calls who talk about these often. We have, you know, calls with legislators, visits with legislators that we have often. So this is definitely an ongoing process for all of us, just to keep track and try to figure out some of these bills that are being presented or voted on. But we're always going to be there, given our perspective. It's important that we do that. It's important that we're there and show our members that we're not giving up on things. No matter what type of information you get from others, these calls prove that we are there and fighting for all of you. So appreciate these updates. Michael, you did great, just as always. So I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Marco. Chad, you got any closing remarks?
No, just a big thank you to both of you guys for all the work you do.
Right, thank you, sir. Jeff?
No, not really. Michael, just to answer you real quick, the reason nobody asks questions to a lawyer is because we don't want to pay the billing hours, but thank you, buddy.
Hey, you guys get the FOP rate, so don't sell me short yet.
Yeah, that's from the treasurer, so we're very appreciative of no questions.
God, love it.
Travis?
I have nothing. Appreciate all you guys' work on this, and thanks for doing the updates.
Yeah, no worries. And we're glad you can attend. My closing remarks are this. First off, cutoff week, you know, we kind of glaze over what it is, but cutoff week is a very hectic week, especially for somebody like Michael. If you guys don't know, the legislature went past 10 p.m. 4 days this week. Or 3 days this week, right? I fell asleep watching the TV, watching them do the debates. And I know Michael stayed up for all of it. So he puts in a lot of hours. It's really, really hectic, really, really stressful for that. And on behalf of all the membership, I want to say thank you, Michael, for the hard work you do. And know this to the membership, that there's not a better person representing an organization, in my opinion, than Michael. And so I'm really proud of the work that he's done, the legislative team has done. We have a very good, solid reputation in Olympia. A lot of people want our opinion, value our opinion. So again, I want to say thank you. And everybody out there, please stay safe. If you want to get involved, see you on Tuesday mornings. Get a hold of your lodge president. And other than that, see you next week.
Thanks for the accolades, Jane. Appreciate you guys and gals. Bye now.